I'd like to call this meeting of your Newark City Council to order. Autumn, please call the roll.
Mr. Cost?
Here.
Stop, hang on.
Well, I'm going to call one roll tonight.
I know. There we go. All right.
Just Mr. Cost.
Mr. Cost? Here.
Still here.
Mr. Fidel?
Here.
Mr. Frazier?
Present.
Ms. Hall? Mr. Labutus?
Here.
Mr. Lang?
Present.
Mr. Marmee?
Present.
Mr. Rath? Mr. Blake?
Here.
And Mr. Buck?
Here.
We have 8 here this evening. If you please rise for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mr. Labutus, shall we pray? Heavenly Father, as we come to you pray this evening, we thank you for this time that we can come before you and ask for your guidance and your wisdom as we talk about the business of the city and how we can make this city the best it can be in each way. I ask that you be in our discussions and our voting and just be with our time together this evening. These things I ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next we have caucus. That's a chance for council to discuss anything pertaining to the agenda tonight. Do we have anything?
Mr. President,
Mr. Morgan?
I'd like to make a motion to excuse council members Hall and Rath.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Marmee, second by Mr. Frazier. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. That passes. Next we have the minutes of our February 19, 2019 meeting. Is there a motion to approve those? Motion by Mr. Labutus.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That passes. Thank you. We have 3 reports this evening from standing committees, one from finance, one from service, and one from safety. Without objection, those will be received and filed. Also, reports from city officials. We have one from Barb Jobs, our city tax administrator. The tax revenue report for the period ending January 31st, 2019 and February 15th, 2019. Without objection, those will be received and filed. Under communications this evening, we have 3. One from Fairfield Homes, Inc. A notice to council regarding Chillicothe Manor to be developed on Wall Pond Drive. We have one from Faye McKee at 499 Leslie Drive, an issue with roosters. I'll summarize that a little bit. Ms. McKee is a longtime resident of Leslie Drive. Her letter basically, she had a problem with allowing farm animals especially chickens and roosters, to be in the city limits. That's definitely been an issue with her, namely the roosters, which they seem to crow all hours of the day and night. She was asking us if we could address that issue sometime, and she may be here this evening to speak. I don't know, but I'll just summarize that letter for you. Last, we have one from Roger Loomis, our water administrator, the lien to the county for past due water, sewer, and storm sewer bills in the amount of $12,977.70. Without objection, those will be received and filed. Next this evening, we have 2 public hearings. The first one is public hearing 18-41. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to open the public hearing. I'm going to have Autumn read the public hearing. We'll take comments either way. We'll close the public hearing and then we'll have her read 1841 and we'll vote on that. So Autumn, would you read the public hearing?
Notice of hearing. Notice is hereby given that the Newark City Council shall at a later date to be determined and announced hereafter take action upon ordinance number 18-41. Said ordinance accepts a proposed amendment to the zoning map attached to ordinance 08-33A, which would allow the changing of the zoning classification of certain real property generally described as 1905 Mount Vernon Road, City of Newark, Ohio, Licking County. The amendment would change the zoning of the property from newly annexed property to MB, Medium Intensity Business District, zoning code of the City of Newark, Ohio.
You've heard the reading of the public hearing, of the notice of the public hearing. Does anyone like to speak for or against? This is your opportunity. Just raise your hand and I'll have you come up. Anyone would like to speak for or against? One more time on this one. Anyone like to speak for or against on this public hearing? Okay. Seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing. Autumn, would you read 18-41 for the second time?
Ordinance 18-41 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Marmee, Mr. Cost, Mr. Labutus, Mr. Lang, Mr. Frazier, an ordinance changing the zoning classification of certain real property generally described as 1905 Mount Vernon Road, City of Newark, Licking County, Ohio, from that of newly annexed property to MB Medium Intensity Business District zoning code of the City of Newark, Ohio.
You've heard the second reading of 18-41. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Cost.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 18-41.
Motion by Mr. Cost to approve 18-41.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. Is there any discussion on 18-41? Seeing none, I'll please call the roll vote.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mr. Fennell?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall? Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Murmy?
Yes.
Mr. Rath? Mr. Blake?
Yes.
And Mr. Bub?
Yes.
18-41 passes 8-0. On this next public hearing, I am going to recuse myself on this, or happen to be the real estate office I'm a broker of has this property listed for sale, so I'm going to stay out of this one. I won't be voting or discussing it, so Mr. Bub is going to handle that.
Okay, thank you. We will continue this public hearing. This next ordinance is 18-42. Autumn, if you will read the ordinance.
Notice of hearing is hereby given that the City of Newark Council shall at a later date to be determined and announced hereafter take action upon ordinance number 18-42. Said ordinance accepts a proposed amendment to the zoning map attached to ordinance 08-33A, which would allow the changing of the zoning classification of certain real property generally described as 20 Cherry Street, City of Newark, Ohio, Licking County, from that of RH, High Density Single Family Residence District, to MFR, Multifamily Residence District.
Okay, thank you. The Planning Commission has recommended a two-family residence district. For this matter, would anyone like to speak for or against this ordinance? Ma'am, if you'd come to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Betsy Beckman. I live at 888 Mount Vernon Road. I'm here to talk about the proposed zoning change of 20 Cherry Street. I spoke to many of the residents this weekend, and we are still opposed to anything but a single-family classification. There are many people that have lived here over 20 years, as well as the newest homeowner who purchased his home just a few months ago with no idea that the zoning could be changed. We are concerned about a loss of property value in our biggest investment, which is our homes, and I hope you will respect the rights of the 85 residents who have signed a petition against this change, and that council will vote that this lot will remain as single family only. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for or against this ordinance that would like to speak to this evening? One more time, anyone for or against this ordinance that would like to come to the podium and speak? See none, I will ask the clerk to read the ordinance for a final time.
Ordinance 18-42 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Marmee, Mr. Lang, Mr. Frazier, an ordinance changing the zoning classification of certain real property generally described as 20 Cherry Street, City of Newark, Licking County, Ohio, from that of RH, High Density Single Family Residence District, to MFR, Multifamily Residence District zoning code of the City of Newark, Ohio.
Okay, you have heard the reading of the ordinance 18-42. Does anyone have any questions, comments regarding this?
Make a motion to adopt 18-42.
A motion on the floor by Councilman Marmee to adopt. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. The second on the floor by Lang. So, motion by Marmee, second by Lang. Any further questions, comments regarding this? Mr. Marmee, then Mr. Frazier.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to amend this to that of what the Planning Commission recommends. There's 1842A, which changes it from MRF to a two-family residence district. So I would like to make that motion for that amendment.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion by Marmee and a second by Frazier to amend to a two-family residence district. Mr. Frazier, did you want to speak to this?
No, I was recommending the same motion, so thank you for the time.
With that being said, Clerk, I believe you'll need to call a roll on the motion to amend to a two-family residence district.
Mr. Cost?
No.
Mr. Fennell?
No.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall? Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath? Mr. Blake?
No.
And Mr. Bub?
Yes.
So it doesn't pass.
So
Five yeses.
So 5 yeses, and that is
To amend.
to amend. So there would be enough votes with not enough votes, correct? Not enough votes, okay. So
Point of order. That is just to vote on the planning commission's recommendation. This is just a motion to amend. We should not need but a majority to amend.
Need 6 votes. That's in the motion.
Okay.
okay, so due to this being 5 votes, there would need to be 6 votes in order for this amendment to pass. So with that being said, we will correctly move vote on ordinance 18-42 as it stands. Is it?
I'd like to comment.
Okay, Mr. Marvin.
Yes, this was actually, when the zoning changes took place, the reason why I'm in support of this is because the property owner, it was originally supposed to be zoned in this manner. There's a conflict as far as what happened during that change. There's one that shows that it is a multifamily and then another that did not. Therefore, the property owner was always under the assumption that it was that zoned in that fashion, in that capacity. And all this was supposed to do is just clean it up and make sure that it was clear that it should be that way. So basically what we're doing here is we're taking away property owner rights from what was originally already given to them, and in order to try to clean it up, it's going to be changed on them. And I just don't feel that that's right to the property owner, that we're actually changing his zoning from what was originally zoned when the maps were put forward. It was zoned to multifamily before the changes, and then during the change of our zoning classifications is where the mix-up occurred. So I just don't think that that's fair that we're going against that and we're doing this to that property owner. Thank you.
Mr. Law Director, if I can ask you a question. As I'm sitting in for the chair, could I offer a motion to table this for 2 weeks?
Can you, as
Can I offer a motion?
President Pro
Yeah.
Tem? Yes.
Okay. With that being said, I would entertain that idea to motion that, or to table this for 2 weeks, as we have some members that are absent this evening. I would be open to that, so I would offer that motion to table this for 2 weeks.
I'll second.
So there's a motion on the floor to table for 2 weeks by myself, Ryan Bub, a second by Doug Marmee. With that being said, Clerk, if you will call roll to vote on the motion to amend or to table this for 2 weeks.
Mr. Cost?
No.
Mr. Fennell?
No.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall? Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath? Mr. Blake?
No.
And Mr. Bub?
Yes. So 5-3. So that would go down to defeat again. So we would be back to voting on the legislation as it stands. So is there any further questions or comments regarding this?
Yes, I'd like to make a comment. I think it's ridiculous this body will not allow full members of council to vote on an issue, and that they voted against tabling it when we don't have a full council here. I'm just appalled by it.
Anyone else have any further questions or comments?
If I may.
Mr. Frazier.
As part of the standing legislation for multifamily residence district, I absolutely agree that that's not appropriate. The Planning Commission agreed that that's not appropriate, and I stand behind the Planning Commission's recommendation, but I will be voting against the legislation as it stands.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Seeing none, clerk, you can call the roll.
Mr. Cost?
No.
Mr. Fennell?
No.
Mr. Frazier?
No.
Ms. Hall? Mr. Labutus?
No.
Mr. Lang?
No.
Mr. Marmee?
No.
Mr. Rath? Mr. Blake?
No.
And Mr. Buck?
No. The motion, I'm sorry, ordinance 1842 will go down to defeat 7-0. With that, I will close this public hearing and turn it back over to Mr. President Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. That being said, 18-42 fails, so it stays as what it's zoned now is residential, correct? Mr. Walker? Thank you. Just want to make sure everybody understands that out there. Okay, next we move on to comments from citizens. There are two sections for comments from citizens. One is now and one is after the legislation. Basically, this is not a debate with council. This is just your chance to be heard. If you would like to speak, just raise your hand. I'll have you come up, and we'll go from there. Ms. Clegg? You just give us your name and address for the record, please.
Jen Knaggy, 2584 Upland View Court. Some of you are aware that I'm involved with the Newark Homeless Outreach, and we appreciate you that have attended and donated. Some council members have come down. We set up every Saturday from noon to 4 at the corner of East Main and Buena Vista. We put up tents, and we give out clothes, food, resources. We do Narcan training, and we try to give housing contacts. We try to just basically do grassroots activism and help people. We have a lot of our folks that live in tents. We also had the health department come down and do Hep A vaccines recently. So I think we're doing a lot of good things in the community. And recently this weekend, we had several people come to us and tell us that their tents were slashed, totally destroyed, and they were thrown out of their camping areas. We had been helping another group of gentlemen there. I think we're 5 gentlemen in a couple tents at the end of Bowling Court. And they chose not to go into shelters because they had dogs. And we've been there. We've helped facilitate them to get propane. During the vortex, they stayed in their tents. And we made sure they had food, and we've taken them dog food. Their campsite was bulldozed. And you want to talk about being appalled. It was snowing. We were supposed to get 3 inches of snow. And we have another vortex coming on where the churches are going to have to open because people in Newark, this is a crisis. Anyone that sits on this council and does not think it's a crisis, please come down with us. Councilman Lang has been there when a little old lady came up and said she was living in the woods. We have people that don't have running water and they don't have anything. I mean, they're probably, you know, I don't even know what they do. And some of these people have jobs. Some of these people are servers. And I mean, I don't want my servers to not have a place to even wash their hands. But it was supposedly our Newark Police Department, and I'm not saying it was, I'm just saying that's what was reported to us, that threw them out their camp and bulldozed their camp down. So we spent yesterday afternoon driving around to try to find them, to make sure that they had shelter. And I realized the railroad owns that. I don't know if the railroad called somebody and said, throw these people out. It's one thing to ask people. They've been there over a year. They had a little lady that was a neighbor that was allowing them to use her address. They're veterans. They can't get to their appointments for their medication and stuff because there's no public transportation here. So I guess what we're asking as Newark Homeless Outreach is to have a little bit of compassion and a little bit of empathy. If anybody in this administration was responsible to throw those people out of their camps and their tents, at least let them pack it up and not slash up their tents and bulldoze their area. And we went down there. There wasn't needles laying around. Those are not addicts. I know a lot of people here have problems with addicts. They drank beer. I mean, these are guys that have served the country. Everybody likes to beat the veteran drum. I think we need to do more as a city, and whether that's getting some property from the county. I brought it up to some housing folks. We've got this property down here where the children's home was. Let's put up a tent city. Let's give them a place to wash their hands. Let's know where they are so we can count them and help them get into housing and help them have a sink that they can wash their hands in before they go make our food and work down here on the square and start a hepatitis A outbreak. I think we need to be much more proactive, and it was very, very upsetting to me to hear that these people, they don't have anything. They don't, my grandmother always says they don't have a pot to piss in. They don't. They barely have clothes, and they're stealing, and they come to us every week for clothes and food. So I guess we want to meet with, thank you Councilman Lang for saying you could get us a meeting with Barry Connell. We want to know what happened, and we want to prevent it from happening again. And then we would like to see some kind of a housing committee formed or something done so these people don't have their tents cut up and don't have their camps bulldozed. So I'll be in contact, and hopefully you all can meet with us as Newark Homeless Outreach. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak? Ma'am?
I'm going to try to do this. I'm not very good at it.
Just take your time.
This is concerning the roosters on Granville
Just
Street.
give us your name and address first.
Sorry, Faye McKee. This is John McKee, and I live at 494 Leslie Drive, Newark, Ohio. My problem is on Granville Street, which is right behind me, a gentleman put some roosters in. I don't know how many there are, but it's been 7 months of a nightmare. I don't know if any of you have ever had to live by roosters, but it sounds funny to sit here and talk about it, but it's a public nuisance, and he's not taking care of them, and they crow all day and all night. Sunday morning, it was from 5:15 in the morning until I left the house at 11:30, and they were still carrying on. And you can go anywhere and read that they're not taken care of when they're doing that, because you want to tell the story about his brother works for a man that has 10 of them, and he doesn't even know that they're there because they crow in the morning when the sun comes up, and then they're fed and watered and taken care of. It's a public nuisance. It's a definite noise nuisance across property lines, being so close in the city. The sanitation worries me, the smell, waste, flies, etc. that's going to happen, especially in the summer, if he keeps them there. They're not being taken care of. There's a humane part of it. I'm an animal lover, and I do care about animals, and they're animals that they need to be taken care of properly. He leaves them out when it's 20 below. They're out there crowing away. The shelter that he's got them in is just a tarp thrown over some wood, and every time the wind blows or it snows, it blows away or blows down, and he just puts it back up over them, and they sit out there and just cry and carry on because they're not taken care of. I'm worried about the loss of property value. I asked him on February 11th, I finally got up the courage to go say something to this gentleman, that it was a noise nuisance, and it was at 5:30 in the morning because they were out there crowing away, and he was getting ready to go to work. And I told him it was a bother, and he said at that time he was getting ready to slaughter them. And I certainly hope he didn't mean he was going to do that in the city limits. I don't know, but after I told him, it hasn't helped. It's made things worse. And I just would really like if we could pass some ordinances to not have farm animals, specifically roosters in my case, in the city limits of Newark. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for this first section? Okay. We'll move on to ordinances on ordinances on first reading, 19-05.
Ordinance 19-05 by Mr. Cost. It's an ordinance authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $2 million for Buckeye Corridor Stormwater Plan Sewer Improvement Bonds for the purpose of refunding outstanding bond anticipation notes previously issued for the purpose of paying the cost of Buckeye Corridor Stormwater Plan Sewer Improvements together with necessary appurtenances thereto and declaring an emergency.
You've heard the first reading of 19-05. It is an emergency. What is your wish? Mr. Marmee, you thinking about that one?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Make a motion to adopt 1905.
Motion by Mr. Marmee.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. Is there any discussion on 19-05? Paul, please call the roll to vote.
Excuse me. Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mr. Fennell?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall? Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath? Mr. Blake?
Yes.
And Mr. Cost? Or, excuse me, Mr. Bub?
Yes.
19-05 passes 8-0. Next we move on to 19-06.
Ordinance 19-06 by Mr. Cost and Mr. Marmee. It's an ordinance to provide for the issuance of not to exceed $1,125,000 of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying the cost of Church Street area improvements and repair, including electrical, sidewalk, street, and streetscape, and all necessary appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency.
You've heard the first reading of 19-06, but it is an emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President.
Mr. Marmee.
Make a motion to adopt ordinance 1906.
Motion by Mr. Marmee.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. Is there any discussion on 19-06? Seeing none, I'll please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mr. Fennell?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall? Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang? Excuse me. Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Sound like me.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath? Mr. Blake?
Yes.
And Mr. Buck?
Yes.
19-06 passes 8-0. Next we move on to resolutions on the first reading, 19-13.
Resolution 19-13 by Mr. Marmee and Mr. Cost, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of Newark to submit an application to the Ohio Department of Public Safety for an award of fiscal year 2019-2020 funding under the Ohio EMS Training and Equipment Grant Program.
19-13 will be held for 2 weeks for our next meeting, and next we have 19-14 on the first reading.
Resolution 19-14 by Mr. Cost, a resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to enter into a lease agreement with Selective Site Consultants regarding land at the City of Newark Service Complex.
19-14 will also be held for 2 weeks for a second reading. And finally tonight we have 19-15.
Resolution 19-15 by Mr. Marmee and Mr. Cost, a resolution appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation.
19-15.
Mr. President.
Mr. Marmee.
Make a motion to waive the 2-day reading rule on resolution 19-15.
Motion to waive the 2-day reading rule by Mr. Marmee.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. Mr. Marmee.
Yes, in particular, we need to get some funds distributed to the JEDs that we hold for them. We collect that for them, then we need to get them to the appropriate entities.
Thank you, Mr. Marmee. Autumn, please call the roll to waive the 2-day reading rule.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mr. Fennell?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall? Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath? Mr. Blake?
Yes.
And Mr. Buck?
Yes.
2-day reading rule has been waived. Mr. Marmee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to adopt resolution 19-15.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmee.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. Is there any other discussion on 19-15? Seeing none, I'll please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mr. Fennell?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall? Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath? Mr. Blake?
Yes.
And Mr. Buck?
Yes. 19-15 passes 8-0. And that concludes our legislation tonight. Thank you for hanging in there with us. Sorry about my voice this evening. Next on the agenda, we have comments from citizens for a second opportunity. Again, the same rules apply. This is not a debate with council. This is just your chance to be heard. Do we have anyone who would like to speak this second chance of comments from citizens? Just raise your hand. I can have you come up. Okay. Anyone from administration this evening? Director Ball.
let me be clear, the police department didn't bulldoze anybody's tents. They wouldn't slash anybody's tents, nor would they throw anybody off private property unless the private property owner asked them to and they didn't live there or belong there. Now, having retired from the police department, I've dealt with my fair share of idiotic accusations, but for somebody to try and get their 15 minutes of fame off the police department's back is purely reprehensible. Thank you.
Anyone else from the city? Honorable Law Director.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll pass.
Thank you, Director Sassen. I guess the next time we should find the list. Okay, Mr. Goss.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I'd like to thank Faye McKee and John for coming this evening and speaking your piece. I do think that needs to be looked at. I wouldn't want that next door to me, so I don't think anybody else should have to put up with it. I mean, I know roosters crow when the sun comes up, but I don't think you want them crowing all day and all night. That would get annoying. I'd have to agree with you.
Thank you for hearing me.
Well, we appreciate you coming and participating. Also, I need to call for a service committee for Mr. Rath. And that I will pass.
Thank you, Mr. Goss. Mr. Fennell.
Thank you, all.
Mr. Fennell. Mr. Frazier.
Mr. President, Faye and John, thank you for coming. I do believe that the current ordinance is that you can have 6 chickens and no roosters, but I'll look into that and get back to you and see what we can do to amend that if that is not the case. But from my past experience looking at our codified ordinances, that stuck out to me that it was 6 chickens, no roosters. So hopefully we can do something to correct the situation.
10.
Newark boys and girls basketball, congratulations on their continued success. The HHCA is going to have a March 14th meeting in order to continue the progress that we're seeing in the Hudson area. Homelessness in the city absolutely is an issue. Whatever we can do to help those fights and understand what's really going on in that community is going to be a good thing for everybody. And thank you for Director Baum for coming up and correcting the situation that's at hand. And with that, I'll yield.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. I don't believe that is correct about 6, but
I'll check.
We'll check it out. Mr. Labutus.
I will pass. Thank
you. Thank you, Mr. Labutus. Mr. Lang.
Mr. President, thank you. Ms. Carnegie, I appreciate your comments, and I appreciate what the homeless outreach group is doing. I think we have to be very cautious and careful about making accusations, especially about our police department. I think their job is challenging as it is. I do stand by what I said, that I'd be happy to meet with you. I think if we start accusing the police department of doing things that they likely didn't do, it's hard to get them to come to the table and want to listen under those circumstances. I can say I've dealt with at least one situation where I've had a resident come to me and say, hey, I think somebody's put up a tent on my property, and the reaction from the police department was did not involve slashing tents or anything. It was a much more cordial interaction, and yeah, nothing to the extent that was described. So it certainly hasn't been my experience. I'd be quite surprised if the city took a bulldozer onto private property. So that said, again, I would be happy to meet with you guys, but I think we just need to be careful about making accusations without really having a firm understanding of what the situation was or the facts. With that, I'll thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Mr. Marmon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I need to call a Finance Committee meeting. Also, I just want to make everyone aware that since I voted on the prevailing side on Ordinance 18-42, I do plan on invoking Rule 21 at our next council meeting. So I'll just make you aware of that. In addition, I would like to congratulate not only the Newark boys and girls. The girls have won the district and the boys are on their way, hopefully, of winning the district. But we have 2 schools in the city of Newark. Newark Catholic girls have also won the district, and the boys are on their way of winning the district. So both schools in the city of Newark are doing fantastic in basketball. I wish them congratulations and also good fortune in the future. And with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Marmon. Mr. Flake.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to give congratulations to the Newark High School girls basketball game. Went there last Saturday, and it was nice to see former Mayor Frank Stair, his granddaughter Gabby, did an excellent job with the whole team, and it was just a really funny, just a really night to see them win 5 times in a row for that district championship tournament. And so, also want to extend my congratulations to that team. I did find out that they don't like to be called Lady Cats. They like to be called Wildcats. So it's don't call them Lady Cats. So it's just straight cats. Don't go there. I do want to. I got to get that out there. My other council members congratulate me. Just want to make sure you're clear. I do want to say that I do think there is a group with several heads of social service agencies, several other business leaders that are starting to discuss the homeless issue in our community. And I do think that there's value in having grassroots organizations such as the Newark Homeless Outreach, as well as Vertical 196, and then also the Crossroads Crusaders. I don't think that your groups have been invited yet to participate, and at the next meeting I'm going to suggest that. And so I know the good works that you do on every Saturday, speaking to Mrs. Carnegie, but hopefully we could get the grassroots groups involved with those discussions. Finally, I just want to, well, not finally, I do want to thank Chairman Frazier for bringing back the legislation regarding the CRA and the discussion about expanding that. Thank you for your work there and for the consideration that you're putting into that effort. And thank you, Director Motter, for also working with the chairman on that. So I appreciate that work. I do want to say in 2 weeks, tonight in committee, Finance Committee, we did hear about the approval for dollars going towards a new fire station. And tonight we heard about the 79 budget positions, and the city has applied but has not yet received 5 SAFER grant positions, which will take us up to 84 for the duration of the grant funding. These 5 positions are essentially fixed term positions, so for the next 3 years we'll have 84 positions. But my question is related to increasing our permanent budgeted positions, no longer being dependent on the temporary grant positions. So I hope we have some more public dialogue about that. And then the second concern, knowing that the administration will be coming back in the future for approval of a loan to pay for the rest of the construction of the building, I hope we'll hear publicly about how the building will be equipped. The information of how the distribution of resources of the fire apparatus amongst the fire stations is important, and I hope we will be able to hear that publicly. And with that, I'll yield.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. And Mr. Buck.
I will pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buck. I appreciate everyone coming tonight. Thank you for bearing with us. Our next committee meeting will be 2 weeks from tonight, March 18th at 5:45. Our next full council meeting will be the same evening, March 18th, which is 2 weeks from Monday, at 7 p.m. So, motion by Mr. Koss, second by Mr. Lang. All in favor, signify by saying aye. We're adjourned.